Africa is a very diverse continent with several traditions and different kinds of people. Each country has had an experience of its own, making them all unique. However, there are many similarities and differences between them. In this presentation, Aerin, Chaklai, and I will be comparing and contrasting the past and present of Lesotho and Nigeria, starting with the ethnic conflicts and civil wars.
For ethnic conflict and civil war. The conflict in Lesotho was mainly due to outsiders. The Zulus raided the land and it was eventually fought over by the Boers as well, causing Lesotho to be taken over by white settlers. This caused the chief of Lesotho to seek protection from the UK, eventually making Lesotho a crown protectorate state. In Nigeria, the conflict over the land was mainly ethnic. The eastern region, named Biafra, did not want to be divided into multiple regions and states, causing a civil war between the eastern region and the rest of Nigeria. This dispute was handled after the eastern region was forced to surrender, and military rule ensued. Basically, Lesotho wanted protection from a form of government, whereas Nigeria wanted the opposite of that. Nigeria was mainly focused on escaping military regime. Whenever a social democratic party was elected as the new president, the election would be annulled by the military regime. This would cause a lot of rioting and political crisis. Unlike Basutoland, Nigeria wasn't dealing with another country attempting to exert power over them. Instead, their military did not allow for democratic elections. Basutoland was mainly focused on escaping the British regime. The Basotho Congress Party forced the Basotho National Party out of office, and power was transferred to King Moshoeshoe II. The British exerted direct control over Basutoland until 1966, when Basutoland gained full independence. Their situations were both similar because in 1998, the Lesotho Congress for Democracy came to power, and in 1999, a fair civilian election for a democratic candidate occurred. This meant that both countries ended in a fair election. In 1975 in Nigeria, oil prices went way down. Nigeria experienced economic crisis and an out-of-hand military. Throughout 5 years, the average income per head plummeted by 75%, over 1,000 earnings a year to a mere 250 for the average Nigerian worker. In Lesotho, there was also economic crisis which really contributed to a lot of the level of poverty they experienced. With an extreme poverty affecting the majority of the population, there are a lot of health issues. Apart from the high HIV prevalence, Lesotho has the world's fourth highest tuberculosis incidence. There is an estimated 696 tuberculosis patients per 100,000 people of the population. There is also chronic malnutrition of children under 5 years old, with vitamin A deficiency. Nigeria is also extremely affected by HIV, having the second largest number of people living with it.
Lesotho has more issues with petty and grand corruption in the public service. Anti-corruption institutions sadly do not have the power to address the corruption in the country. Anti-corruption policies and rules are generally weak. There are a lot of issues including ministers and public contracts that have come to the public in the past years and have ruined trust between the anti-corruption and the public sector. Lesotho has tried to talk about the corruption through several laws over the past decade, such as a 2006 amendment to the National Anti-Corruption Law, which requires public officials to disclose arrests they make. The government has recently received funding to follow a public improvement and reform program which tries to professionalize the public administration and bring up the capacity of the service. While in Nigeria, they mostly have troubles with political figures, such as in 1995, General Abaka vows to step down after reforms are complete. The Nigeria military-based government hangs 9 political activists, including Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was accused of involvement of killing 4 pro-government chiefs in 1994. And in 1996, Kudirat Abiola, the wife of detained Moshood Abiola, is shot and killed in June. In 1997, Hole Soyinka, an exiled writer, is charged with treason by the military government. Lesotho mostly deals with petty crimes and very small incidences. Nigeria, though, deals with a lot of issues much larger than Lesotho. In Lesotho, the only type of one-party system they had to deal with was when Moshoeshoe was in control. Moshoeshoe was the first leader of Lesotho, which was once called Basotho land. He immediately became leader and led the village to an area in the mountains where Lesotho is now. Lesotho mostly dealt with a dictatorship coming from a majority of their leaders until 1993. Overall, there were no reasons for a one-party system, it just became that way because of how it started. While in Nigeria, though, one-party system was placed because of riots that occurred due to military rule. And finally, after political crisis, Major General Abubakar promised free election in early 1999 and a civilian sworn in as a president of Nigeria on May 29th. In January, election monitors declared that the local elections were fair and the country enters campaign seasons for the election of its first citizen leadership since 15 years ago. On February 27th, Nigerians vote for a civilian president. Nigeria's election commissioner announces former military ruler Olusegun Obasanjo as president. Similarly, though, they both dealt with some sort of dictator controlling all of the political choices. And finally, the return to a multi-party democracy. Lesotho and Nigeria had similar experiences with the way political figures ran things, but they had different political figures in charge, and many of their actions were different when dealing with the political system. In Lesotho, it started out with Moshoeshoe II as the king and Chief Jonathan as the prime minister, who had issues, and Moshoeshoe was overthrown and exiled. Later, the prime minister was overthrown by a military coup. Later, General Justin Lekana got into power and had half the military council arrested and 9 ministers dismissed. He was also sent into exile, and his son, Letsi II, came into power and formed a monarchy. This encouraged Moshoeshoe II to return on the 20th of July in 1992 after 2 years in exile, but as an ordinary citizen, not as a king. Mokele, the veteran leader of the BCP, won a victory in the country's first multi-party elections in 23 years, which were held in 1993. In Nigeria, though, they elected a new president that faced many problems, such as a dysfunctional bureaucracy, a collapsed infrastructure, and a military that wanted a reward for returning peacefully to the barracks. The president stepped up to his role of power and retired hundreds of military officers who held political positions that should not have been given, established a blue ribbon panel to investigate human rights violations, ordered the release of scores of persons held without charge, and rescinded a number of questionable licenses and contracts let by the previous military regimes. The government also moved to recover millions of dollars in funds that were secreted in overseas accounts. Similarly, though, they both worked with the military council and dismissed and arrested many people from the military council as well. With all the similarities and differences, we know that both countries are very unique and have their own experiences to show. Each country has their own traditions and beauty to show the world. We hope you enjoyed the presentation and thank you for listening.